Good morning. I'm so glad to have you guys here. I'm going to go over my client services agreement and I'm going to leave it up and talk a little bit so you have a chance to read it, and that way I'm not reading it to you. I've gone through it already and I've highlighted some things, and that's what I'm going to draw your attention to. Please, please leave me some comments. I would love to hear your thoughts about this. I never think that my paperwork is the end-all be-all. I'm always looking for comments and suggestions so that my clients have an excellent experience. And I want my practice to be protected, so I want to make sure everything I'm doing is conforming to the latest licensure laws. So let's dive in. At the beginning is the intro. Nothing really new or different here. I do abbreviate or use initials for achievebalance.org. The name's kind of long and it's just, I didn't want to type it all the time, so I went back to initials. The second paragraph just describes counseling services, the benefits, the dangers. I wanted to be consistent, so I noticed that in the document I was going back and forth using the word therapist and counselor and therapist and counselor, and that can be confusing to the clients, and our responsibility is to make sure that we're being very, very clear. So one of the things I highlighted is the word therapist, so I'm just going to delete that and type in, well, I'm going to take off my caps lock and turn off that and just write in counselor. So reading on, you can see I make sure I draw the new client's attention to the differences between psychotherapy and medicine. And then down here I talk about the benefits and risks. Now, meetings, I do get a little specific. One of the things I really believe in is that as counselors, we're able to describe our procedure to our clients, not in a way that guarantees success, but in a way so that they understand what a treatment plan is. You never want to go to the dentist with a sore tooth and have them say, well, if you come back, maybe you'll feel better, maybe you won't, right? You at least want to know what to expect from the process. And so we do give our clients during the 10-minute consultation and at the end of the first session, we let them know what exactly to expect from the first 3 to 4 sessions. So with an individual, it's generally a 3-session process. With couples, it's almost always a 4-session process. And we do explain that to them on the phone and then again at the first session. So down here in writing, it says the initial assessment will last from 1 to 2 sessions. I'm just going to change that to 4 since we do a 4-session assessment for our couples. During this time, you and your counselor can both decide if he or she is the best person to provide the services you need in order to meet your treatment goals. I didn't like the grammar here. If psychotherapy is begun, I'm going to delete that and write in if you choose to begin psychotherapy. Your counselor will usually schedule 1 meeting per week. Well, that's not always the case. We try to make sure we conform to our client's schedule. So actually what I'm going to type in is your counselor will schedule 1 meeting at a time you each agree on. All right, so I'll leave that up a second. Scrolling on, we get to professional fees and cancellations. Now, professional fees, as you're reading this, fees will be collected when services are rendered. I'm actually going to put in an asterisk here just to make sure I draw their attention down to this clause that we have about prepaying. Occasionally we'll have clients who no-show 1 or 2 appointments, and if that happens, we don't want to drop them from our roster, but we do want to let them know that we don't want to just keep hitting their credit card over and over and over again for no-shows. So sometimes what we'll do is we'll ask them to prepay for their next session. So it's almost like a retainer. So if they want to continue to see us, but they have a problem with late cancels and no-shows, now they've got this money sort of tucked away. It's here. I mean, if they don't use it, of course, we can, we can give that back. That's not a problem. But we do want to make sure we're clear in the language here, in that fees will be collected when services are rendered unless they're prepaying. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this part because we did cover that. I'm going to put a period inside the asterisk. Hope that's right. And I will take off the color. And you can see we do charge the full price for late cancels and no-shows. We do offer technology. And we help them understand that, if they can get to a confidential location, we can do a session with them. I'm changing the wording here. We cannot accommodate. I'm changing to may not. We may not accommodate cancellations made after hours or on holidays to our main number, as we do not accept voicemail. Of course, we do accept voicemail. We just don't check it all the time. So that's what I'm going to say, as we cannot check voicemail regularly. So, of course, the first thing we do is we check it Monday morning, and if someone is canceled over the weekend, we do want to make sure we accommodate that if it's an emergency. And then I've already addressed this, so I'm going to take the color off. All right. Court testimony, it's, I don't do court testimony unless I'm subpoenaed. I have done that before, and so I do insist on a retainer. But this is so rare. It's just one of those things that I think most of you would agree it's good to include in your service agreement. It's important to note here that if you receive a subpoena, you have to show up. Even if your client hasn't paid you or you're having trouble getting paid, if a judge tells you to show up to court, you got to show up. So, but this is good to have in your document, especially if you see couples or you anticipate sort of high conflict cases. And again, I would love to hear your comments about this. I think, there we go. Yeah, I'm wanting to put in may again instead of is. So I'm going to delete is. All right. All right, let's keep scrolling. I made a note here. We are answering at 9 o'clock, not 8:30. All right. Again, this is sort of something I changed because I'm the only therapist here now. If your therapist leaves for an extended period of time, you will be given the information for another licensed therapist with whom you may schedule if you need an appointment during your therapist's absence. This was easy to do when we had other therapists in the practice, but now that it's just me, if I'm going to refer out, I just want to let the client know that they would have to fill out new paperwork. That's entering into a new practice. It's not like we've got a reciprocal agreement and we have the same paperwork. Going from one practice to another is just like going from one doctor's office to another. Everybody's got paperwork, and we have to make sure that all of that's in place. If that's inconvenient for the client, that could be troublesome, but it's just something we have to do. So I'll remove the color and just make this a little more grammatically correct. All right. We're pretty adamant about our clients not contacting us by phone. I've never carried a pager. I've never carried or insisted on somebody manning a phone. My perspective is, if you have an emergency, you need to go to the hospital. Don't call me. I'll just get in the way, and you need to get to where help is. So I do want them to always call 911 or just go to the directly to the emergency room. This is our social media policy, and we've developed this over time. I've gone to some conferences and I've heard sort of what other people are doing. But like you, I mean, it's going to be growing and changing all the time. The message I really try to give is social media is not for communication. Bottom line, don't try to communicate with me through social media. I will ignore you. And actually, Facebook has a neat thing now. It's almost like an autoresponder. And when you turn it on, it just kind of shows up like, hey, thanks for contacting me. Call this number and you can talk to a real person. So it's just like a, you know, an I'm out message. All right, limits of confidentiality. I haven't changed this much. I don't like the word S there, so I will delete that. We do use a HIPAA compliance file storage called Sukasa. So if you do the same, one of the things you might consider is to make sure that you have a link so that your clients can access the privacy policy. They can go to the security page and download and see how everything's all encrypted. I'm deleting this. I think at one time I was allowing therapists to access files from their personal computers if they made sure that I looked at them and we encrypted them, and that's just a mess. I don't like that anymore. Personally, I only want you to access files when you're in the office on the office computer. Just too many things can happen, people getting their laptops swiped and phones swiped, and it's hard to, if you're not able to get those things off the phone. And anyway, so I'm deleting that. Okay. And I just noticed, I don't know if that's the right link. I'm going to double check that I get Sukasa. I think I've got Dropbox security, but I need to put Sukasa's security link up here. So I'm going to write that down. Note to self. All right. This just goes on. I'm going to go slowly so you can read. Looks like I don't have any changes. This is from Chapter 611 in the Texas Code. So nothing really new here. And then we do have a clause about counseling via technology, just defining what that is. We adapted some rules and recommendations from NBCC Code of Ethics for counseling based on our counseling via technology. And I'll let you take a look at that here. I am not a lawyer. I don't play one on the internet. So these are our recommendations for Achieve Balance. If you have better ones, or if you've had a lawyer look at yours and say, oh my gosh, don't put anything in there about triage, don't put anything in there at all about cross state lines. Yeah, of course, you know, to do what your lawyer says to do. This is just how we've chosen to address things like if our clients are traveling, or if they just moved to a new location and they haven't found a therapist, things like that. All right, professional records. Looks like a little grammar thing I'm going to fix. And this just explains how our clients do have access to their clinical records. Now, this is something I am in the process of updating: the termination, death, or incapacity of a therapist / termination, closure of practice. And you know what? I'm going to change the word therapist there to counselor. So I need to update this because these are my colleagues, but they're no longer part of my practice. They've grown and flown, and they've got their amazing practices on their own. So I'm going to need to get agreements in place in writing. It was easy before because we all had access to the same stuff, and they could just go into Sukasa and update the credit cards and just kind of keep everything moving. But now that it's just me and a solo practice, I'm going to have to get an agreement with them a little bit more formally. And so what I plan to do is just get a piece of paper that says, you know, I agree to allow one of these folks to access the records, and I will probably give them access to an online program that I use that stashes paperwork and passwords, and it keeps everything nice and secret and encrypted. And once they have access to that, then if something happens to me, they can go in, they've got all the passwords, and they can care for the records until my estate's probated. So I'm going to leave that highlighted. And this is old language. None of the therapists take insurance at a cheap balance. And a lot of you do this too if you don't take insurance. You provide your clients with a copy of the receipt. You can see if I have one over here. Something that looks like this. So they have the information here at the bottom. Ours is an NCR form, so they just tear it off and mail it away. And then minors and parents. I almost skipped over this. Our clients can go to our website and download a HIPAA pamphlet that just explains their rights regarding their protected health information, and we have it in English and Spanish. And I think we're getting to the end. And we just want minors to know that we try to protect their information. They're subject to limits of confidentiality, but we also need to let them know that their parents, in most cases, can access their information if they ask, but we ask them not to. And then finally, we have information. I don't like that formatting. I'm going to hit return a couple of times. We have information to access the Texas State Board of Examiners of Professional Counselors and Marriage and Family Therapist complaint process. So if you see anything that I missed, and goodness knows I'm sure I did, please let me know. But if you found this helpful, let me know that too. I'm going to make these corrections, and we're going to put this into the private practice in a box paperwork that you can access in our store at katewalkertraining.com. Don't forget, pick up a copy of the book, My Next Steps, Create a Counseling Career You'll Love. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great day.